Thank you, Will. We're going to talk to Belle, who's over here with the international papers. Of course, the big story, Belle, is the ongoing investigation into the Paris attacks, operations in Belgium as well last night.
Yeah, and the front page of one of the French-language Belgian papers leads with what we know so far. So 16 people arrested, Abdeslam still at large, is what they say. In Le Soir, another French-language Belgian paper, the editor-in-chief writes quite poignantly about what it feels like for a city to go into lockdown, as it did last night. She talks about the city slowly turning itself off and going dark. Theatres and shops that have never been shut, she says, fell like dominoes. The information circulated by SMS or online, where residents glued to their different screens could read it there. She talks about an unbearable heaviness, forced resignation, infinite sadness, and a black rage at having to back down from our daily lives. And she quotes a filmmaker who said that the only response really to this sort of a situation would have been to carry on going out, to go to the cinema, to go to the theatre, evoking there an image of Camus and his revolt or revolution or protest against terror.
Sure. And there are some moments of hope in the coverage of Brussels today as well.
Yep. Also in Le Soir, a story of two now newlyweds who, despite the fact that the city was on lockdown and on red alert, decided to get married on the Saturday in the deserted streets.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful.
Nice to see.
It's a beautiful picture. It's a picture really of strength and resistance against fear. And then another phenomenon which emerged, images that were circulating on Twitter whilst Brussels was on lockdown as the police operation got underway. Here we go. No, it's not the police, it's cats. The Belgian authorities asked residents not to post any information about the ongoing police investigation and raid that was going on. So the Belgian locals responded with humour and also with solidarity. They put pictures like this up on Twitter with the hashtag Brussels lockdown. Now, of course, as the cats were filling Twitter, we get cartoons a little bit like this. Now, here you have things not to say to a suicide bomber. And the cat, in fact, there, the cartoon cat, is saying, so, is it banging? As in, is the atmosphere banging? But obviously a little bit of a slightly sick joke there. But anyway, and then we had this was such a sign of solidarity, this Twitter cat hashtag, that the Belgian paper Le Soir decided that it would dare, in its own words, to post on the front page of its own website a picture of a cat itself with that same story. So even making the front page of one of the French language Belgian papers.
Excellent. It's so good to see, isn't it, that humour can prevail as well. Now, it may not be making the front pages, Belle, but the weekend's attack in Mali is still getting some coverage as well, isn't it?
Yes, it's not being covered as much as the Paris attacks, which were a week before, but there are some stories that are emerging. One here is a testimony of a security guard at the Radisson. He is the security guard that survived. His colleague was shot after he gave false information to the gunman as to where the Air France team and crew were staying, which floor they were on. This Telegraph reporter, a British paper here, says that this shows that the gunmen were targeting French citizens because of France's 2-year-long military campaign in the north of Mali.
And what are the French papers then saying about the attack?
Well, there's an interesting and quite informative, actually, article in Les Echos, a pro-business paper, that looks at the face of terrorism in West Africa. Now, it says that Mali has become the front line in a global conflict between a jihadi movement and the rest of the world. Now, it describes also how the Al-Qaeda affiliate that claimed responsibility initially for this attack, Al-Murabitun, split in May. So it really goes into depth on this. It split in May when half of them decided they wanted to pledge allegiance to Islamic State organisation rather than to Al-Qaeda. Now, of course, that was published before the new reports that we're getting now, that in fact it was a little-known group called the Messina Liberation Front who actually possibly carried out this attack.
And parallels have been drawn as well, of course, between the Paris and the Bamako attacks. You found one article saying they're not as similar, though, as perhaps we're led to believe. Yeah,
this is two academics who write in the Washington Post, and they've both lived in Mali and Paris, and they say that there's a real big difference here. Whilst the Paris attack was an attack on the French Republic itself, the Bamako attack was exactly the opposite. It wasn't an attack on Mali, but an attack on those foreigners who are in Mali to try and ostensibly help to fix it.
And very briefly, because of course a third attack this weekend in Cameroon, this one.
Yeah, and this, I mean, it's surprising that this wasn't given as much coverage. It was a Boko Haram attack when, according to a Global Terrorism Index report recently, Boko Haram actually killed more people than IS in 2014. But the French press has a little look. Le Monde here looking at the funding of these organisations, these Islamist organisations in Africa, and says the only way to try and mount a fight against them is to coordinate the funding from the West.
Belle, thank you very much. Belle, looking at the international papers, Will with business as well. Thanks.